Beginning another live stream today. Hello. My lips feel a little bit chapped. That's not a good sign. I do have some water though. I don't know if anyone is here. So what's happening in this particular live stream? I did something crazy, which I sent a tweet about it, and then I promoted that tweet to see if that does anything, like if random people join, just to see if I can get a little more audience in here. Oh, wow, I can see the stream actually just started. It takes a while to get going. It just started with me drinking my water. Ah, somebody is here. Excellent. Hello. Okay, so I've got this YouTube channel, and I've been making a lot of videos about processing, this thing called processing, this JavaScript programming with a framework, a library called p5.js. And I started a series, a playlist about working with data. And in the last example, because I didn't actually prepare anything, so this is me doing my preparation. Oh, I want to get the new editor, but I'm not going to worry about that this second. In the last example that I worked on in the last video, I looked at how you could query Open Weather Map, the API, and look for data from that API, pull out pieces of data, and draw something on the screen. So I have my list of videos that I intend to make. I'm here getting JSON from an API with a query. So what I want to do in this particular video, the green screen's a little bit fuzzy today, but what I want to do in the first video, so I'm live streaming right now, but while I'm live streaming, I'm going to hit record a few times and record these video chunks that I will upload later as the standalone tutorials. And so in the first one, what I think what it will make sense to do is to take this particular example and look at how I could have a user type in a city and then have the API queried with that particular city, or perhaps have a user pick a city from like a drop-down menu or that sort of thing. So that is my plan. So first I would like to know, actually, before I even say that, does anybody have, can you hear me okay? Can you see this okay? And if I come over here, is this in focus enough that you can make out what I drew here? I'm gonna go look over here and see. Yeah, it's a little bit light, but let me know, can you read this? I think it's this pen, yeah. Let me look at this. That looks pretty good. So let me know if the sound, the picture, all of that is okay, so that I don't start going on and on and on with you can't hear or see. All good, thank you. Hi, Jerome is here, P5 Art. Hello, welcome, nice to see you on the live stream. Nice to have a bunch of people here. I'm excited. Okay, I'm like low energy today. I gotta do something about that. I don't know how to get higher energy, but seeing people say stuff in the chat is always good. Okay, so does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to ask? Anything you're not sure about? Let me know before I get started. I think I'm actually ready to go with this particular example. Okay, I'm going to drink some more water here. My video settings got a little bit messed up, but I have about an hour or a little bit less. I have about an hour, so rather than, if I start trying to fix these green screen settings, I'll be here for like a half an hour. So let me just fix this wire. Make sure my hair looks okay. Oh yes, my hair looks excellent. That's really the thing. I spent a lot of time this morning making, trimming and coiffing and all that kind of stuff. Get ready to talk about, because you have to look good when you're talking about APIs, right? Okay, I gotta get started. I'm stalling 8 people here, that's nice. So I'm gonna put this down and I'm going to delete these and let me get this in a good place here. Let me minimize this, hit stop, and move this over. So I'm here, and then when I run this, this shows up over here. And let me give it a little more space. Just organizing my desktop here. Oh, I see why I moved it over. Okay, I'm gonna change something about this example real quick to make it a little bit. So is this font size okay? If you're watching the live stream, is this font size okay? Should I make it bigger, smaller? And now I'm just fixing this example a little bit to make it a little bit better to start from. And then I'm going to take this whole thing and put it in a variable. And say this. OK. I'm about to get ready. I'm going to check the chat. Font size, maybe a tad bigger. OK. I'm going to make that a tad bigger. Make it, let's try 36 point. I think this probably is good. Let me know if you think it needs to be even bigger still. OK. Sort of a trade-off of getting more code on the screen, but also having it be more legible. OK, here we go. Oh, the jackhammering has started outside. That's not good. I'm going to have to close the window. I like to have the window open, sunlight coming in, the breeze through my hair, because you got to talk about code while you feel like nature outside with you. But sadly, I don't want you to have to listen to the live jackhammering. Let's see. Good like that. Excellent. OK, here we go. I'm going to start with the first video. Let me cycle the camera, because these cameras have a thing where they turn off after 30 minutes. I'm going to move this backpack so I don't trip over it. Cycle this camera, and I'm ready. I got a pen and an eraser, some water. It's 10 a.m. It's the morning. I'm full of energy. All I did want to do, I woke up this morning, I said, all I want to do is make videos. The thing is, that's actually true. That's how I feel. I enjoy this. OK, here we go. 1, 2, 3. In this video, I'll start over. Let me just check the chat. Nobody's saying anything. OK. I think one thing I need to do a better job of, I think, is at the beginning, just saying what the video is going to be. Because I kind of do this like wandering, rambling thing, which I think doesn't really work if you're kind of just quickly coming in to try to figure out what you're watching. So, OK. All right, here we go. In this video, what I want to look at is how you can take user input from a user and pass that user input to an API, query, get some data, have that data come back into your program, and visualize something on the screen. So this is an example that I built in the previous video, which I'll link to below. And what this example is doing is it's querying an API called Open Weather Map. It's sending a city. The city that it's sending, you can see right there, is London. And then it gets back some data about London. What's the current temperature? What's the current humidity? And in this example, I'm pulling that data out into 2 variables and drawing 2 circles on the screen. So first I gotta admit something, which is that this is like perhaps the least visually interesting data visualization anybody has ever done. So I don't have a visual bone. So I'm demonstrating the technique. So what you would do, hopefully, with this technique is thinking of a new way of presenting information via weather or doing some type of animation. There's lots of possibilities. But what I want to show you here is no matter how many times I run this, it's always just going to query the API, boom, as soon as the program starts. And then it's going to get that weather from London, and it's never going to query the API again. So how do we make something that when the user enters a city, that we get that, then we query the API, show the information. The user could then enter another city. We get that information, query the API again. So how could we query the API over time while the program is running? How do we think of that as a sequence of events? And how do we tie that to drawing? We being me right now, and then you. I got this thing about pronouns. It's really like a problem that's in my head all the time. I could only think about what pronoun I use, but I'll link to something in the description below about why I think about that all the time. OK, so let's make that happen. So first of all, I need somewhere to get user input. So right now, what this actually is a web page just with this canvas on it. So what I would like to do is add to the web page something where the user could type in a city. So guess what? I'm going to add there's an HTML page associated with this JavaScript code. It's the page that's loading this code. So I'm going to go there first. So in this p5.js editor, I'm going to hit the settings button and say show sidebar. And then there's a bunch of extra stuff in here that I'm not using. because this was built, and I'm going to go to this index.html file. And now, in the HTML body, what I want to do is add paragraph, and then I'm going to add an input. Can you see this? I'm going to add an input field. And I'm going to give it an ID. We'll call it city. And I'll put London in there, and I'll say city : So now, what I've added is just some HTML that on the page I want to see a field that a user could type something into. And if we run this, you can see, there it is. Oops. And by the way, so I did that incorrectly. Look at this. So what I wanted to do, if we look back at that window, this was going so well until I got confused. Like, look what's here. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have the word London populate that text input field automatically. And I thought, I don't know how to do this, but sometimes it works this way. I could just create this HTML input element and put London in the middle. But I forgot that the text that is in the text input element is actually its value being an attribute of this HTML element. So if I want to do that, I just need to say value equals London. So now if I fix that, and let me make this a little bit wider so you can kind of see it, and I run this again, you can see, there we go. So I now have this text input box at the top with the word London in it. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Now maybe I should also add, very briefly, I'll put like a line break, and then I'm going to add a button with an ID called submit, and I'll say submit. So now I've also added an HTML element, a button. So I have a text input element pre-populated with London, and I have a button. So when I press that button, I'm going to ask the API to give me the weather for whatever city is in that field. Excellent. Okay, so let's look at this. Run this. You can see, there we go. Now I could do a better job like styling this and putting line breaks in and that sort of thing. But the point here is that I could do this, and then I could type New York, and I want to see what's in the canvas, what's in the drawing change based on that current weather. So how do we do that? I'm excited. Are you excited? I don't know. You shouldn't be as excited as me. I'm a little bit excitable. It's a bit of a problem. It gives me a lot of anxiety in life. But I'm doing well today, and I'm happy to talk about this with you. Okay, so let's first, to answer this question, we have to look at something. We have to look at this URL. Look at this URL. It's a long thing. I figured it out in the last video that I have a path to the API. I have some weather, I have a question mark, Q equals London, that's the city, app ID, that's my API key, units equal metric, that's giving me the information in Celsius, right? So how do we, what do we need to do? And to figure this out, I'm going to come over here to my trusty friend, the whiteboard. Hi, trusty friend, the whiteboard. Let's think about this URL. So most APIs, if you're making an API query, it's very similar to typing a URL into the browser. In fact, if I pasted that URL into the browser, we're going to see the data associated with it. I kind of wish I was doing that right now. Let's do that for a second. I'll come back to the whiteboard, right? So let me go over here, and I'm going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to go into Chrome, and I'm going to paste it in up here, and I'm going to look and see, look, here's the data coming in. And you can see that up here is the city. So even if I just, up here, if I just change that to New York, for example, you can see, aha, now I have the weather associated with New York, which the temperature about, 18 degrees Celsius, that's about right. It's actually quite a beautiful day. The sun is shining. I don't know why I'm inside talking to a camera all by myself. I make the same stupid joke in all my videos about how I'm talking to a camera by myself, but it is true. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Okay, so now you can see the way that you could get a different city. Over here I could type Tokyo, and I'm going to get the weather for Tokyo. The way that I get the data from a different city is to change the URL. So somehow I'm able to do that manually in the browser. Somehow I need to figure out a way of doing that in code. And the reason why I was coming over here is, was I not? No, I was here. Was I in the right place the whole time? Missing London already? Yeah. Somebody tell me in the chat. Hopefully I record. I'll have to fix this video. No, I'm over here. This is like Charlie Chaplin. Like, someone download this, edit this, and add some like music to it. Yeah, I'm not like Charlie Chaplin. I wish I was like Charlie Chaplin. That would be good. Okay, so all right. So how do we do this? I don't know. This video is. I kind of want to re-record this video, but so in my code there is a URL, and it's one long string. It starts with like HTTP. It has like openweathermap. Blah 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 blah. So somehow we have to figure out the way that to do this is to piece together the URL from its components, one of which happens to be dynamic that's happening with input from the user. So for example, one way that I could think about doing this is I could say var API equals http://openweathermap.org/weather ? So like this is the beginning of the API query. Then I might have another variable called like city, which I say, these are strings, which I say is London. Then I might have another variable where I say something like API key equals, my crazy API key. And then when I want to make the actual URL, which is the actual URL that I will send to the API, then all I need to do is say, I want to have the API plus the city plus the API key, right? Remember the plus symbol with text, right? 2 plus 2 equals 4, but the string 2 plus the string 2, right? This is actually a valid use of air quotes, by the way. You usually air quotes is just kind of an obnoxious thing in general, but I feel like if you're trying to indicate a string, like this is like a time in my life where I'm allowed to use air quotes. Now I feel ridiculous, but the 2 in quotes plus 2 in quotes is 22, right? 2 plus 2 is 2, 2. Not 22, but 2, 2. So what this is 2, 2, like a thing that you wear when you're doing ballet. So this, I'm trying much too hard to be more interesting than talking about this. This is not going well. It feels forced today. So this is the way that you can put together the pieces of an API call in as a URL by having them in components. The whole reason I'm talking about this is because now this one can be dynamic. So if city is not a hard-coded value, it's coming from the user, and every time I want to query the API, this always stays the same, this always stays the same, this is the thing that changes. So let's go see if we can add that to the code and make this work. I'm over here now. Okay, so coming back to the program, let me minimize this. Coming back to the program, oh God. We can look now at the components of this URL. So let's say what I want is all the way up to here is going to be kind of like the first part. So I'm just going to call this the API, and maybe I'll call it like API path, so sort of like the path or the API. Let's just call it API. Then I'm going to make a variable called city, and I'm going to make that London. Then I'm going to make a variable called like API key, and it's going to be this whole thing. And then I'm going to make a variable, and then I'm going to make a variable called units and add this. So you can see now, and I think if I make this a little bit wider, unfortunately, like it's sort of hard to fit everything out, but now I've got it. You can see now, and what do I have? I have some like weird warnings here. Missing a semicolon somewhere. I don't see my oh, you know what I did is I used a double quote and a single quote. That'll fix things up. Okay, so you can see now that I broke the API call into its parts. So all of these things are not going to, the API key and units are not going to change. I always want to query openweathermap. I always want it in metric, and I always have this API key. Now, of course, your scenario might be different, but for this particular scenario, the only thing that changes is the city. And so now, when I want to load the data, I would say var URL equals API plus city plus API key plus units. And now we can see, let's just make sure this still works as before. It still works as before. So instead of having the full API call as one long string, I now have it in pieces. And we can see if I change this to New York, now I'm seeing the New York weather. You're just going to have to trust that that's kind of the right values again, because this is my pathetic little, I'm just drawing the temperature and the humidity as circles on the screen. Okay, so we're getting somewhere though, because now I can move this, right? This API call is happening in setup, only in setup. Where do I want it to happen now? If we look at this web page that I've made, I want that API call to happen when I click the submit button. So how do I make that happen? I need two steps. One, I need access to that DOM element. I need to select that DOM element. Then I also need to attach a mouse pressed event to that DOM element. So let's add those two things to this program. I'm going to say, var button equals select submit. So if you remember in the HTML page, the button has an ID, submit. So the ID is a way that I can select that element in my code and do things to it. So now in my code, as long as I select by the button's ID submit, I can now say button.mousepressed ask for, and I don't like ask, weather ask. I don't know. You think of a better, I'm so bad at function names. You think of a better function name than me. But the event that I want is weather ask. So now I can take this and I can write a function called weather ask, and I can paste that in there. And oops, I need two parentheses. And by the way, I'm kind of standing in front of my code, which is the thing that always happens. So if I move this over, that'll help you. So now, right, I selected the button. When I press the button, call weather ask. When I call weather ask for the weather based on this URL that I've made of all these components from the API call. Now run this, and every time when I hit submit, I get that weather. Now notice, every time I hit submit, it's the same thing. Why? Because city is still hard-coded as New York. But now we can do something really exciting. That's just a variable, right? Why not get the value of what? This text input field. Why not get what's in that text input field and store that in that particular variable? This is going to make things really, really great. Okay, so here we go. So first of all, I need a variable called input, and I need to also select that input. Input equals select. Now I don't remember what ID I gave it. I gave it an ID city. So now I need to say select city. And then what am I doing here? Instead of city being hard-coded as New York, I can override, actually we don't even need this variable anymore, honestly, because we don't want to hard-code the city, so I can take that out. And actually, I can make it a separate variable, but all I need to do now is put input.value here. Oops. So because I've gotten that text input element there, I can get the value and add that to my API call. So again, the path to the API doesn't change. My API key doesn't change. I always want it in metric units. But I want the city, that piece of it, to be from that text input field. And here we go. It's running. Like you can see it submit, and I've got London. And let's try some other cities like Tokyo. Los Angeles, you can see, it's not very humid in Los Angeles. New York, Toronto, right? Okay, so you get it, it works. Oh, that's great that it works. So this is a nice thing to practice with APIs. I mean, this is kind of one sort of, obvious way of doing things. You take some information from the user and you send that to the API, you get some data back, you display the data back to the user. So I might suggest, what else could you imagine here? Could you create a checkbox? And whether the checkbox is checked, when it's checked, you would get Celsius. When it's unchecked, you would get Fahrenheit. So that would be one thing to try to add to this as an exercise, I think, if you're looking for like a technical exercise to do. Mostly I would say, what sort of data is in there? What kind of more interesting way can you display the data back? If it's raining, can you make it rain in the canvas? Again, these are kind of like obvious, literal visual representations of the data. But I think you might also be able to think more creatively. And what I would like to do now, I think that kind of covers the whole basis. There's a missing piece here I just realized, which is that, so we've done two things. One, we've queried the API the moment the program runs, and then we're done. Now we've done a second thing. Anytime the user performs an action, like pressing a button, we query the API and we get data back. A third thing would be have the program automatically query the API every so often. And this is something you want to do if you have data that's changing a lot. And there's an example of an API that gives you the latitude, longitude of the International Space Station, where it is sort of above the Earth. And so that's an API that the space station is moving, I think, continuously, that you get different data all the time. So I would also like to do, and maybe I'll do that in the next video, is look at how you query an API, over how do you set to do it every 100 milliseconds or every 1 second or every 30 seconds, and just have that happen in the background while an animation is continuing. So I'll take a look at that in the next video. And the other things I want to do in some of these future videos is just look at other APIs. New York Times is on my list, WordNik is on my list, that sort of thing. So let's see, this ended up being like a very long video. It was like so short for a while, but I had this like section in the middle where I just I wasn't sure if I was in the right place, and I started like rambling about wearing a tutu. If you're still watching this video right now, hashtag Schiffman22 or something to let me know you were watching, because no one's going to be at 18 minutes in this video, I swear. Okay, I think that's a thing that maybe I'll do at the end of hashtag Schiffman air quotes. I think I need to put Schiffman in there. Or maybe just stop watching already. Go. It's a beautiful. Hopefully you live somewhere where it's a beautiful day. And even if it's not a beautiful day, being outside is nice. Okay. My mouse went to sleep. Even that's how long I've been recording this video. Okay. Okay. Let me check the live stream. Okay. All right. Okay, there's 13 people here now. So hopefully that, I don't know, did that make any sense? I think that I'm going to open the window for a second to get some air. I don't know if can you hear that jackhammer? Is that showing up on the audio? So I think I will go on in the next video. It's only 10:20 now, so I have another 40 minutes, I think. I think I will do an example where I query that space station API over and over. Somebody suggested it to me on Twitter, which was super nice of them. I can't remember who it was, but let's see. So ISS, latitude, longitude, open notify. So this is an API. Let's look at this. This brings up another thing, which is, okay, this is an API where I'm getting continuously the latitude and longitude. Now, I just realized there's a component of this. So I want to draw something on the screen based on this latitude and longitude. If I hit refresh, it's changing pretty often. It's not by a lot, but it's changing. What I want to do is make something move on the screen according to this latitude and longitude. Oh, you don't hear the jackhammer. That's good. This brings up a whole question, like how do you convert latitude and longitude to X, Y coordinates? Which is a tricky problem because the Earth is a sphere, and spherical, and if you flatten it to like a pixel space, there's some maths involved. But I'm going to ignore that problem, I think, for the purpose of this video, and just do like a simple map. Map, not like map, but as in the map function, like map to its an X and Y. So what's a range? What's the range? What is the range for latitude? I should look this up in advance. Latitudes measure from 0 to negative plus minus 90. Longitude measures the prime meridian runs through Greenwich. I was just recently standing there in Greenwich. And longitude measures from 0 to plus or minus 180. So latitude 0 to plus or minus 90. Longitude, does that make, that sort of jives with this. Latitude 0, okay. So I can use that to do the mapping, to map the negative 180 to plus 180 to 0 to width, or 0 to height, and latitude, right? Latitude would be X, longitude would be Y. Am I making any sense? You can hear the jackhammer. Some of you can hear it, some of you can't. I'm going to close the window before I start the sort of more official. I guess I should just close it now. It just gets a little hot in here. Okay, so anybody have any questions or concerns? Or I have this desire to just pour this on my head. The live streaming about data, plain water that's not very cold challenge is what I'm thinking of doing here, but I'm not going to do that. If it would raise money for a good cause, maybe I would. Okay, so I think I'm ready to do this. I'm just going to actually start it from scratch. Let me get a P5 sketch set up, save as ISS animation, save, and actually let me clear this. I'm just going to add some code in advance before I start recording. I mean, this is being recorded, but, I'm going to make a canvas, which is 600 by 400. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Background 51. And I'm just going to put an animation on. Let's have a variable line x equals 0, just so we see that it's continuously animating. Line x plus 1. That's fine. Plus 5. And if line x is greater than width, line x equals 0. And then I'm going to draw a line from line x, 0, line x height. Okay, I just want to have something continuously, I guess I need to give that a stroke so you can see it. I want to have something continuously animating because I want to emphasize, it still has all that stuff in the HTML, which I'm going to take out now. And let's just get rid of this. I want to have something that's animating because I want to emphasize that even while you're making the API query and waiting for the data to come back, that's happening asynchronously, meaning the draw loop can still continue. And it's interesting, I think, to note that this is sort of native to the way JavaScript works. In previous videos where I might have demonstrated something similar using processing, native to the way processing in Java works is everything is synchronous. Like if you ask for the data, the next line of code is not happening until that data comes back. But here we're going to be able to say, just start that process of asking for the data, keep doing this. When the data comes back, update this other thing you're drawing. So that's what I'm going to do here. And I haven't made this example before. I really should probably make it and then make the video, but I'm just going to go for it. And I think there's two ways of doing this. One is I could in draw every once in a while query for the data, or this might be a nice opportunity to talk about set timeout or set interval. Why not, right? Why not talk about that in this video? I think it's sort of worth it. I'll mention what I'm talking about in the video. Okay, anybody have any comments or questions before I get started? Let me cycle the cameras. And I'm going to cycle this one. And I'm going to erase the whiteboard over here. Okay. I like the song that's always in my head is Where is Thumpkin? My son plays it on the piano every morning to wake us all up. It's actually really sweet. He's 7. Okay, back over here. You guys aren't saying anything in the chat, which I find to be disconcerting. Is this still happening? Is anybody, let's see. All right, come watch Shiftman live. People are tweeting about this, that's exciting, but there's only 10 people here. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about the International Space Station. Okay. Let's start over here. Oh, and this is, call this ISS. And close this. And here we are. And this can be now, sorry everybody, I'm just getting myself set up here. And here we go. And 3. The lights are still on, yeah. You can still hear me. Hold on, I changed the battery in one mic. I just want to make sure I changed, this one's okay. I've got 2 bars, okay, good. Here we go. Hello, in this video, I'm going to look at how you query an API continuously while a program is running, a program that's perhaps animating something, and that animation doesn't stop, it continues smoothly, but updates whenever new data comes in. Boy, isn't that an exciting topic. You woke up this morning and thought, I want to watch a video about how you query an API continuously while an animation is happening, right? Okay, so that's what I woke up thinking I was going to do, is make a video about that. Actually, I just thought of this a few minutes ago, so I didn't really wake up thinking about it. But let's just get started. So this, by the way, is a program that I've set up in advance just to have like a simple animation on the screen. Nothing too exciting. This line is moving across. There's a single variable for the line. The line is incrementing by 5 pixels. When it gets to the end, it starts back at 0. So we can see there's an animation. Now, what I need to demonstrate this idea is I need an API that's going to give me data, and it's going to give me different data every time I query it. So A lot of APIs don't really do this. For example, if you ask for the weather, you're going to get the temperature outside. And the temperature outside obviously is changing, but the weather API probably is only going to update every few minutes. If you ask for the New York Times to do an article search, there's not going to be a lot of new articles with a certain word every few seconds. However, there is this API called that's on opennotify.org, and it gives you the International Space Station current location. And by the way, in case you were wondering, that's changing. It's moving. Or the Earth is spinning. I don't know. Somehow it all works. Physics. Ask Stephen Hawking. I don't know about this stuff, although I find it fascinating. So what we can look for here is look, here's the URL for getting JSON data with the latitude and longitude of the International Space Station. So all I need is this particular URL. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put it in the web browser to look at that data. And we can see there it is. The International Space Station position is currently at this particular latitude and this particular longitude. Hit refresh. Oh, come on, change. It changed, right? You can see it's changing each time I hit refresh. A little bit, but changing. Whoa, it's moving by a fast latitude. This is called the refresh dance, by the way. It's good. Physical exercise is important. While I'm standing making these videos, I feel like I need to move around more. Okay, so when you practice APIs, move around. Where was I? So this is some stuff that I want to get into the program. So first, let's just get started with that. So the first thing I want to do is grab this URL now, and inside the program, maybe just in setup right now, I'm going to say load JSON. And I'm going to say the URL is, for this particular API, and let's just make this a global variable. I'm trying to make things that fit in my code nicely. Var URL equals, bad copy-paste job. Paste that in there. So that's the URL for the API query. Let's make this a little bit wider. So now I want to load JSON. I'm using the p5 load JSON function, which says give me a URL, which it doesn't say anything actually, but the thing you can give to it is the URL where you're going to get some JSON, and then a callback. So I'm going to call the callback got data. So this function will be executed when the data has come back. So I'm going to say function. Now I'm going to write that function got data. The argument, the parameter of that function, which I happen to be calling data, you can call it anything you want, like a manatee. The parameter data is what's going to get filled with the JSON that's coming from that URL. So just quickly, if I just said print line data, we'd be able to see very easily that, whoops. Okay, so remember this thing? I talked about this in a previous video. Boy, I hope this works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work because of security issues with how information is passed between different servers, and opennotify.org is a different server. And if you just add some padding, so this thing called JSON-P, if you add a third argument, JSON-P, maybe someday I'll make a video just what is this JSON-P thing? It's telling P5 behind the scenes to use this other way of getting the data that kind of passes security. So hopefully now, when I run this sketch, we can see, and there it is. Now you can see the data showed up down here in the console. I've got that data. So looking at this, remember, the next thing that we need to do is figure out how do I get the latitude, how do I get the longitude? Well, JavaScript object notation is the way that I do this. This whole thing is an object, and I want to get the first property, ISS position. And then I want to get the first property of ISS position, latitude. I want to get the second property of ISS position, longitude. And by the way, I said first and second. In objects, the order doesn't actually matter. It's not like an array where you would be referencing from the index. You'd be, I'll be, I am. I don't know what tense I'm in anymore. Present, past, future perfect, something like that. But I'm going to, in a moment on the computer, type in data.issposition.latitude. That's how I traverse into this JSON data. Okay, so back here, I'm now going to say print line, just to make sure this is working, print line data.issposition.latitude. What rhymes with latitude? Fortitude? I don't know. Okay, and you can see there it is, beautiful. So let's think about what I might do now. With that data, what might I do? Okay, well I want to draw the space station on the screen. And my space station, again, from the person with no visual talents, will be a circle. So let's make a variable called ISSX. ISSY, because I want to make variables that are impossible to pronounce. And in got data, I'm just going to say ISSX equals the latitude, and ISSY equals the, say it with me now, I feel like I'm Mr. Rogers, longitude. Can you say longitude? It would be, yeah, that's a good thing to aspire to be Mr. Rogers. So I put those in those variables, and let's give those variables some default values just to start. And then let's, in our program, I feel like this belongs to you and me, this program, so I could say our program. I'm going to draw the International Space Station. And now I'm going to say fill 255. Here we go. And where is it? I don't see that International Space Station. Why don't I see that International Space Station? What data am I getting? 50, negative 95. Well, if I draw something at the pixel x equals 50 and the pixel y equals negative 95, that's where? 50 over, that's way off the screen. So this brings up an interesting question. I have a latitude and longitude. That's real world measurement data of where the ISS actually is above the Earth in the units, latitude and longitude. But this thing that I'm drawing in the window is pixels. It's two-dimensional, it's got an x-axis, it's got a y-axis, 0, 0 is the top left corner. So I somehow need to translate latitude and longitude to x and y. Now, a topic for another video might be how to do that using, quote unquote correct, I won't use air quotes here, but quote unquote correct math, right? If you take a sphere and you flatten it out, you need to do some sort of like spherical transformation of those spherical coordinates to where they are in a 2D plane. But sometimes in life, that's too complicated. I don't want to worry about that right now. It hurts. I have like a pain that's like, it's in my lower back right now, and just want to like live an easy and friendly life. And the way that we could do that is just with the map function. Because latitude has a range between negative 90 and 90, and longitude has a range between negative 180 and 180. Which one is it? Well, one of these was negative 95. I was right about that. So I could just take those ranges and map them from 0 to pixel width, from 0 to pixel height. So let's do that. So what I really want to do is I'm going to say var lat equals the latitude, var long equals the longitude, and then ISSX equals a map, the latitude, which goes from negative 90 to 90 to between 0 and width. So if you recall, I definitely have a video somewhere all just about this map function. What the map function does is it takes a value that has a given range and maps that value to another range. By the way, you could do that math yourself if you wanted to. I know you guys, I believe in you. It's not that complicated, but it's nice to have the map function to handle that for you. And I think perhaps in my other video I talk about what the math behind the map function is. Okay, so now if we run this, dun, dun, dun. Look, there it is, the International Space Station. And if I hit refresh, come on, move. You can see it's like moving a little bit, very ever so slowly and slightly. So, I probably could do a better job of making this appear more visually interesting, but we've got something working here. But I spent all this time, I've been talking for 9.5 minutes, and I haven't even gotten to, this is just all set up. All set up for the real tofu, I don't want to say meat, it sounds weird. The real essence of this video, which is now, all I did was query that URL at the beginning in setup, and I got the data once. I want to just keep getting that data over and over again. How do I do that? Okay, so there's a couple possibilities here of how you could do that. One thing is I have this draw loop. Draw, remember, is looping over and over again for the purpose of the animation. So I could figure out a way to just put the load JSON function in draw. That would be querying the API 60 times per second. Now that's probably way too often. So another way I could do is use some kind of counter and say every 10 times through draw, or every 30 times, or every 100 times query the API. All of those are possible. And I encourage you to try doing that on your own as an exercise, or put something in the comments and say, hey, can you link to some code that does that? I'd be glad to do that. But what I want to demonstrate to you in this video is another way of doing it. And I will shuffle off the buffalo over here. Buffalo. And I'm going to do this with a function called setTimeOut. And even better yet, I think maybe I'll actually do it with a function called setInterval. These are functions that are part of JavaScript itself in the browser. These are not p5 functions. And what these functions do, set timeout says, trigger an event once, at blank time. So set timeout says, I want you to do this event and I want you to do it 3 seconds from now. Set interval is very similar, trigger an event over and over every blank time, every blank milliseconds. Time should really say milliseconds, at blank milliseconds, at blank milliseconds. So, right, the difference is the event is clap, right? I'm going to say the event is clap. So if I say set timeout 3000, what's going to happen is 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. If I say set interval 3000, what's going to happen is 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, right? It's going to do that at the same interval over and over again. So you can ask yourself, which one is the one you want for this program? I want to ask for the data every so often. So I can use set interval. Now, there's some nuance to this. There's some reasons why in other scenarios I'd want to use set timeout, and then once I get the data back, just ask for it again. That actually could be a good way of doing this, but set interval is going to be kind of easiest for us right now. So the way that these functions work is, if I'm using set interval, for example, set interval, and then I'm going to pass in a callback. This is the function name of the thing that I want to happen every blank milliseconds. So all I need to do is say set interval, do this thing every so often. Let's look at that over here now. So in setup, I want this to start in setup. I want to say set interval, ask ISS, what should we do? Let's just do every second. So 1,000. So this now, this line of code says execute some function called ask ISS every 1,000 milliseconds. And the magic of JavaScript and asynchronous events is I can set that thing up going and it's going to happen on its own, but draw down here will also continue. So this animation will continue, the API calls will be happening, when the data's ready, the getData function will happen. Everything, how the order of everything will happen will be managed by the magic of JavaScript event-based handling. So all I need to do is set up the events. I need to say, set up this interval and then also do draw at the same time, which is what I'm doing in this program. So now, what goes in this function called ask ISS? This load JSON call. So I just want to do exactly this load JSON call every 1,000 seconds for the rest of time, at least while the program is running. And we can run this now, and you can see, there it is. Come on, move, dot, move, ISS, get some speed going. So one thing that I might do actually here is change my mapping. Right? This mapping is I was kind of mapping the full latitude, longitude of the entire world. But we can see here that it's currently at latitude 47 and currently at longitude -54. So let's go between 45 and 50 and like -55 and 50. So if I change this to be between 45 and 50, and what did I say? -55 and -50. I think if I do that, we're going to get some, oh look, there it is, it's moving. Can you see the space station? The space station is flying every second. Now, you can see it has a rhythm to it because I'm querying it every second. What I would love to do with this, but I've been this video is approaching 15 minutes, is I would love to add a little easing motion into it so it doesn't just jump to the next spot, but when it gets to a new spot, it sort of smoothly moves and you can make it sort of feel like it's moving. I would also love to put an actual map there. I'd love to do the correct spherical maths. I said maths again without even thinking about it. Usually I do that just because I like saying maths. But, oh, it's leaving. Goodbye, International Space Station. So anyway, but I'll leave that for you, exercise for you guys. So what I would say is give this a try. Build exactly the same thing. What happens if you do it every 10 milliseconds versus every 3,000 milliseconds? Could you make it interpolate between those two locations? I'm trying to think of other exercises that you could do. But play around with it. I'm sure you could be creative and come up with some ideas. And hopefully this video helped you learn something today. I don't have anything like Schiffman tutu, although I think I just have to say Schiffman tutu at the end of every video now. Okay, goodbye. Broken sleeping mouse, hashtag sleeping mouse. You can if you watch this video, tweet me hashtag sleeping mouse Schiffman sleeping. I don't know. How am I going to keep track? I'm not going to be able to search for these things. Never mind. Okay. Goodbye. Okay, that was pretty good. It's 10:40 now. All right, Ken here. Okay, did that make sense to anybody? I'm trying to think of, okay, so now let me go back to my notes here. I recorded that one. Let me go back to my notes here. What did I do? I got, so I did open weather. So the first, video number 6 was getting JSON from API with a query, open weather map. Number 7 was configuring query with user input, open weather map. Number 8 was get data continuously with ISS. So now here we go. This is my list, and I'd be curious for what you guys, anybody who's watching live now, thinks. I want to do a video with the WordNik API, the one with the New York Times API. I'd love to do a video with some image-based API. And then I want to do a video about word counting and like term frequency, a video about working with Google Sheets, and a video about saving data with parse. So I'm here at 8, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more to do in terms of this data and APIs. Oh, you can't even see what I'm typing here. That's terrible. So A, do you guys have any thoughts? Do you have any questions? How's this list sound? In terms of images, does Instagram versus Flickr versus Google Image Search have any appeal to you? Let me know. And it's 10:45. I think actually, unfortunately, this is probably going to be it for me today. I have to move on and get ready for class. That happens in life with real people that I talk to. And so I think I'm going to do these tomorrow. So I did 7 and 8, did 2 more, which I think is good. And tomorrow I'll probably do WordNik and the New York Times. But I'm curious if you guys have any feedback or any questions. Anything? Is anybody actually still watching? I don't know if you are. Let me know. Any feedback, any questions? Should I do like I can like twirl while I'm waiting? That's like my loading. This is my loading animation. Like personally, like I'm loading or waiting animation. That would be a good topic, which is like if data takes a long time to get, how do you have a program? But this list could go on and on and on. Because actually, to be honest with you, something I need to add to this is multiple callbacks and closures. This is a bit beyond the scope of what we're doing in the course, the sort of like intro to programming course here at ITP. But this really is a necessary topic. And related to that is like, and that really, part of that is loading animation. I actually have a URL page in notes where I wrote up about this that you could look at. I see maybe a question. I know this might be covered in the map function video, says Nalomi. And you should make a sketch on how many people are watching this video. Well, I could do that pretty easily. I could just write the word 10. It says 10 for me. Thank you. I'm glad that you guys have enjoyed this. So I don't know, actually, in some ways I think it might make more sense for me to do these more often and just do them for an hour. I've been doing them once a week for like 2 or 3 hours because that's kind of what my schedule allows. I'm gonna have, can you talk about how changing the map parameters to 45 made it appear on screen? Okay, sure, yeah, so I guess maybe that wasn't particularly clear. What I did is, let me come over here to the whiteboard a second. So, So what I did when I changed the map parameters is as follows. So if this is the canvas, and I say, this is like pixel 0, this is pixel like 600, but I'm basically mapping from negative, the measurements I'm mapping go from -90 to 90. And if the current measurement is like, well, I don't know, let's say that's not drawn in the right place, is like 45. And then the next measurement I get is 45.2. It's just going to move like a tiny bit. But what I did was essentially by changing what the minimum and maximum latitudes are, it's as if I'm like zooming in on this section. If I say this is 45 and this is 50, a change of 0.2 in that range will map to many more pixels. Whereas a change of 0.2 with this range maps to very few pixels. So that's what made it appear visually. It was moving in both of those, but when it moves like 0.3 pixels versus when it moves 30 pixels, it just is, visually, it's a much stronger effect. Did that make sense? We'll check the chat. Giphy API. Oh, that's a great suggestion, Antonius. Hi, Antonius. What time is it in China, Antonius? So Giphy, let me add that as a... The sort of issue with Giphy is that rendering the GIFs is sort of a tricky issue because they're animations, but that I could definitely do. How about storing data to a database? So I'm not going to work at present with like a whole database setup, which would involve like server-side programming. But what I'm going to do is show you a web service called Parse, which is one that I use a lot. You can use it for free, although if you use it a lot, you need a paid account. But what Parse is essentially a database on somebody else's server that you have an account with that you can just send data and retrieve it. And actually, I have an example that I'll build, which is you have the user make a drawing, and it saves their drawing to the database, and the user can load their drawing again later. So I will. That's the sort of example that I hope to demonstrate at some point in a particular video. Any last questions before I go? Now's your chance. And oh, I gained a couple viewers just when I'm leaving, but you can watch this. You can watch this back. It'll get archived as soon as I hit stop on the stream. I just found out so someone's asking, is this live stream happening on a regular basis? So my goal is to ultimately have a regularly scheduled live stream, possibly even several times a week. I'll probably start that honestly in like February 2016, because right now, but currently, sorry, you don't care about that. But what's happening right now is I'm doing these every week on Thursday, either in the morning or the afternoon Eastern Standard Time, and I'm posting when I'm doing it, usually on Twitter. I should probably have like a URL, like when is my next live stream? Not that I have that many people who are like interested, but just so people could check that. What I can't figure out, the YouTube live page, sometimes it says the next stream is at. I can't find anywhere where I put that in. Like I've looked, I've asked YouTube support, no one's given me an answer. So if somebody can help me figure that out, on the live page, I'll always put like when the next stream is. I'm happy to do it today, Wednesday, just because I had some extra time, but this is a really long answer. And I just like put it up on Twitter this morning. But I am gonna do this again tomorrow, Thursday, and it'll happen around, I'll start sometime between 12:30 and 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I have a meeting that goes until a little after 12. And as soon as I can get the system set up, I'll just start. I'll be doing this for an hour or two tomorrow, and I'm going to continue this discussion. Now, that said, all of these videos get archived on YouTube, and I even like chop them up into chunks that are a little bit more digestible than this longer one, so you can see it that way. Yeah, Parse is great. I like using it a lot. It's a nice solution. Okay, so I think I'm going to go. It is 10 of 11, and I thank you all for watching. I didn't press the play ad button this time. I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm going to try to upload these videos at some point when I have a chance today, and we'll see you guys soon. Send me your... by the way, the best way if you want to ask a question is to just ask it in the YouTube comments, because I'm kind of obsessively tracking those to try to just make it feel like it has activity. You can also, but email, I have just an impossible time with email. So we're getting some emails recently from people. But if you want to ask a question, ask it in the YouTube comments. Okay, I'm going to click a button over here, which is going to sign me off. I will wave. I will blow some kisses, which is maybe a weird thing to do on streaming, but it felt like a friendly thing to do at the moment. And I'm going to turn this mouse back on, and I'm going to click this button. Goodbye, and see some of you hopefully tomorrow, or some of you in the hallway if you happen to be here at ITP. Goodbye. Checking the chat. Here we go. Clicking. Goodbye.